Hey now, we are getting over, and I am the Silver King, Adam Silverstein, here to lead you through these hard times. With episode 815 of your favorite professional wrestling podcast. That's right, Getting Over is back once again, and it is Thursday, so you know exactly what that means. We are here to break down everything that happened across NXT and AEW over the last week. Obviously, AEW presented its special Blood and Guts show Wednesday night, which was pretty much filled with blood and guts. NXT was the equivalent, I guess, of a go-home show to a 2-week Gold Rush program emanating from the theater at Madison Square Garden. And yet, the NXT Championship was on the line in the main event of this Tuesday's show, not one of those shows. So clearly, there is plenty to discuss as we tread through this edition of the Getting Over Wrestling podcast. And what I can do for you off the top is remind you that here at Getting Over,
it's all about Defy.
So head over to Apple Podcasts and Spotify, leave a 5-star rating on Apple, take a little extra time, leave a 5-star written review. If you do, we will read it live right here on the show. Also, don't forget to follow us on social media at Getting Overcast on Twitter and Blue Sky. You get episode drops, news, analysis, highlights. You can send in questions and comments for the show. We will read them on the air. On YouTube, you can listen to full-length audio episodes and watch full-length video interviews. Of course, Getting Over is also available wherever you can listen to fine audio. So make sure you subscribe and follow us at Getting Overcast. This is normally the part of the show where I would tease you into a new segment, but for the second straight episode, Tuesday and Thursday, there's really not that much news to discuss. We do have one item that we'll talk about a little bit during the AEW breakdown on the show, but for the most part, we're free and clear to get into the full breakdown of these shows. I will mention, as always, there are timestamps in the episode description. So if you're only here to listen to NXT or AEW, you do have the opportunity to skip around. As always, I do hope you listen to the entire show. I will also mention Silver King is trying a new microphone angle as I tape this episode. So if it sounds a little different, if it sounds better, please let me know. You can hit us up on social media. You can comment on Spotify. You can email us, gettingoverpod@gmail.com. The goal is to eliminate some of those plosives and a little bit of the S sound that you sometimes hear when I speak and when Vintage speaks. And I'm hoping that this sounds just as deep and just as rich, but at the same time eliminates some of the audio I wish that we could do without. And I've been struggling with this for a long time, so I really would appreciate feedback. Again, whether it's better, worse, the same, whatever the case might be. So with that said, let's begin our breakdown of NXT. Tatum Paxley opened the show, I believe, for the third straight week, getting loud Tatum Tuesday chants. She expressed love hearing her name announced alongside the championship, acknowledging that she must calm down and start listening to her friends. Oh yeah, Sean Spears, by the way, full suit, jacket with sleeves, whole 9 yards, huge improvement. Izzy Dame reiterated that Tatum needs to chill, reminding that she must be a champion for herself, not the fans, which is why the calling took her in. The crowd was so busy getting itself over, it didn't acknowledge the clear heel angle that Izzy was taking here. She's telling Tatum, don't listen to the fans. They suck. Worry about yourself. And they're just busy chanting other shit. They didn't react to her. That's one of the problems with the WWE Performance Center. When it's great, it's great. And when it's trying to get itself over, it actively hurts the show because it's not responding to things that are actually happening. Fatal Influence interrupted with JC Jane suggesting Paxley prove her title win wasn't a fluke with a rematch because she's an actually deserving contender. Dame protested and Jane did some wedge driving. Tatum responded by saying she would indeed be more selective after she gives JC her rematch at Gold Rush. The segment worked overall, but it was undoubtedly repetitive from prior weeks, and I don't fully understand why they are making Paxley look like such an idiot. It was okay for the last 2 weeks because she was really excited and she's a big-time babyface champion, but those giveaway title opportunities should now be in the past. JC is actually deserving of a rematch, so this booking didn't even fit the idea of Tatum giving something away haphazardly because Jane was a dominant champion who does deserve a rematch. I love that Tatum can still be happy-go-lucky with the title, but booking her as an actual moron severely diminishes the legitimacy of her reign, which is the opposite of how she should be positioned. successfully defending her title over tough opponents to prove that her win over JC was not a fluking kayfabe gifted by fans in reality, but rather something she legitimately earned. JC, by the way, was awesome in this segment from a character standpoint. There were so many high school bully nuances to her acting. It really hammered home her perspective versus Tatum's perspective. Later backstage, Tatum confided in Ricky Saints, who supported her decision-making, saying she needs to be champion her own way. Saints boosted her confidence, saying she'd kick Jane's ass next week. When the calling came through, gave him the stink eye and kind of pulled her away. Paxley then went to tell Saints something he needed to know, but by the time they got her away, she wasn't able to do so. Champions and peers, they really should be interacting like this a lot more in wrestling. It makes no sense to fully separate the men's and women's divisions when in situations like this, they can face common problems and work together to find solutions. This came across as organic and natural, like something that would happen in reality backstage when coworkers see each other in the office. It was simple, but a massively effective segment. Even later backstage, Kalani Jordan confided in Trick Williams, basically apologizing for having his name in her mouth, saying it is indeed lonely to be champion, and the only way to be successful is to be selfish. She said that she had his back in the main event, and Williams big upped her for, basically getting his back, confident that she would retain the title next week, and even calling Lonnie her, which was really cute. And more of what I said a moment ago about being a logical, natural segment where the genders were irrelevant because the perspectives were aligned. But the part that really hit me was Trick calling Lonnie her because her fiance is Carmelo Hayes, who obviously goes by him. So that just was a really cool way to end this segment. That brings us to the main event of the show, the NXT Championship on the line. Saints against Williams, last man standing. Ricky sold taped ribs, which Trick worked with a trash can early. He then trapped Saints in the ropes and wore him out with kendo sticks so hard that it broke. Saints answered with a trash can lid shot, and he avoided Trick running at him with a sidestep and a toss through the barricade. Williams drilled something with his head and immediately started bleeding from his temple. He sold it well, he saw the blood collapsed into another barricade piece. It was really, really smart thinking by him. Saints first wore him out with a kendo stick, leading Williams to beg, only to get worn out again a dozen times with steel chair shots. Ricky speared him at a standing 9 count, but failed trying Rochambeau the next time. Trick threw him into the corner where he had a prop chair and then flew outside. Williams rammed him with the steel steps for a standing 9, then drilled him with a trick shot off the steps, only to pull him up at 7 for a bookend into the steps. Then he placed the steps over Saint's neck and stood atop them, but Ricky easily slid out, shoved him off into the ring bell, which commentary just completely missed. Trick then avoided Ricky, who flew into the crow's nest base. Trick starts celebrating, but Ricky escaped. They brawled into the crowd where there is not a lot of space behind commentary. He hit another trick shot, but Saints stood at 9 and speared Williams literally out of the crowd downward through the announce table. Ricky was gushing blood out of his mouth. I don't know if he lost a tooth, if he bit his tongue, bit his cheek, whatever the case might be. And they were using each other's bodies to stand up. But as they both got to their knees, Saints shoved Williams in the face at 9.5 and stood up before 10 to retain the NXT Championship. The match went long, so a planned Oba Femi return was botched. His music played almost immediately after the bell, and all we really saw was his shadow on the entrance ramp as NXT went off the air. First of all, this match was an absolute
banger,
a million times better than the Halloween Havoc main event and the match that either should have been on that show or should have been saved until Gold Rush next week. I still do not understand why this main evented a normal NXT when they're going to be in the theater at Madison Square Garden for a major show in front of a paying audience. This should have been the main event of that. They beat the shit out of each other, for real. Ricky took an immense amount of punishment, maybe second only to his match with Bryan Danielson. Trick, who is largely a finesse wrestler, he got his ass kicked more than I believe in any other match he's had to date. The work ringside by the Crow's Nest was obviously repetitive, but it was completely worth it for the spear out of the crowd, which was phenomenal. And the perfect finish to the match only would have been better if it was Falls Count Anywhere instead of Last Man Standing. I saw some conjecture over Ricky shoving Trick to the ground and how that should have restarted the count. Normally, I would agree, but there are two key points here. First, referee discretion always comes into play. But more importantly, their hands were on each other the entire time during a double count. So the simultaneous count began as they were engaged, and it ended when they finally disengaged. It was done to protect Trick a little bit, and I was okay with that. It was also different from how most last man standing matches end, so the uniqueness factor played in as well. You guys know I'm the first one to point out something breaking kayfabe rules. I believe there's much ado about nothing when it comes to this finish. This was a war and a better usage of this stipulation than we got on the main roster with Damian Priest and Aleister Black, even if that had an equally great match finish. I went 4.25 stars and an A for this. I cannot imagine a world in which Williams wrestles another match in NXT. This had to be his farewell. He put on a banger. He leveled up for his last showing. He went out on his back against the champion. There's no reason left to challenge for the title again, and there's nothing else for him to accomplish on the show unless it is literally just trying to beat Oba Femi, which doesn't really make a lot of sense when there's no title on the line. He should probably get called up as one of the unannounced The Last Time Is Now tournament participants. That's what I would do. Now, as far as Femi's return, I don't understand why people are so pressed about him remaining in NXT. He's wrestled 42 televised matches. He's been in NXT for 2 years. He could get called up now, after WrestleMania, after SummerSlam next year. It doesn't matter. He's 27 years old in the future of WWE. They will bring him up when they have a spot for him. The worst thing they could do is just throw him on SmackDown with nothing to do, even if it's handing him the United States Championship like they did with Braun Breaker and the Intercontinental title. You have him win a bunch, and then what? There's no reason to be impatient when it comes to Oba. In his case, you can be confident WWE and Paul Levesque know exactly what they have. And by the way, NXT is a show on network television. It needs stars too. You cannot just pull every single talented person from the brand, put them on the main roster, and then leave NXT to scratch and claw to get viewership. Now, regarding the return being rushed, obviously, shit happens. I can only imagine how manic they were in gorilla position trying to finish the match, which did have a rushed out. So Oba even had 15 seconds that he did to appear on TV. Ironically, the shot they got of Femi in the shadows from distance was sick looking, and it wound up being an unexpected cliffhanger. WWE did not post the full footage for 17 hours. They waited until 3 p.m. the next day, and when they did, it was even sicker than what we saw in those few seconds. We shared it on our socials at Getting Overcast, but not only did the light illuminate Oba from a distance, when the camera switched to Ricky, he was all bloody-mouthed, hanging over the ring ropes, exhausted, and Femi's massive shadow loomed behind him, literally. I'm not one of those "this is cinema" people, but that shot was cinematic. What shocked me most is that WWE waited so long to upload the full clip. This should have been out immediately after the show. But man, if that had gotten on TV, a lot of people would have been talking about it. I started contemplating coming out of this what the booking scenario might be from here on out. I believe I got it. Ricky and Oba fight at Deadline. Saints drops the title back to Femi. He gets wins over Femi and twice over Trick Williams, a short title reign. He can say he's held both men titles in NXT, and then he gets called up to the main roster. That puts the strap back on Oba. That way, Javon Evans can finish his story like we all wanted at Stand and Deliver, or a subsequent show in 2026. It's a best of both worlds scenario. Saints gets a title run, Femi gets a second, and Evans gets the win in the specific match everyone wants to see. Book it, Sean. Jordan Grace backstage said Lonnie last week tried to justify taking the easy way out in their title match. Cheating is uninspired and lazy, she said. It doesn't take any skill. Grace focused on the triple threat for the TNA Knockouts title, calling herself the greatest such champion, ready to course correct by winning it back. Probably her best promo since joining WWE. Definitely scripted, at least to a degree, rehearsed, but she nailed it. I don't see her winning the title. That creates a whole other set of questions. We'll talk about it at a later date, but this was solid. Javon Evans backstage bragged on FaceTime to Leon Slater about being in the Last Time Is Now tournament. He told Slater that he would patch him into the Titantron for a special announcement. In the ring, Javon was excited yet nervous about the opportunity to fight Gunther, psyched that he's going to be wrestling in Madison Square Garden at age 21. Then he brought in Slater, announcing they will be challenging Dark State for the NXT Tag Team Championships. They were in the middle of promising to make magic in the match when Dark State, of course, made their entrance, but they didn't attack right away. Osiris Griffin mumbled through his promo. Dion Lennox was much better. Cutler James remained serious and boring, and Saquon Sugars then threatened. He was easily the best promo of the four, with Slater proving he was lying in wait the entire time. He ran out from the hard cam side with the faces standing tall despite a 2-on-4 disadvantage. They hit a pair of huge topes and remained in the ring together. Dark State later cut a passionate parking lot promo, but they basically just said their normal shit. Actually, a pretty great segment, all things considered. Javon was smooth on the mic, probably his most confident promo in WWE. The fake out with Leon was pretty smart. I just assumed he wasn't there like everyone else. The Dark State stuff, it remains 50-50 because, as I've said multiple times, only half of these guys are worth anything, at least right now. There's no reason to always have 4 dudes speak when you have 2 quality talkers in the group. I remain confused as to why NXT gave Cutler that personality that we suggested and then just took it away for no reason whatsoever. He's back to being as dry as white toast. He doesn't fit in the group. Most important is that this came full circle after Evans and Slater conveniently ignored Dark State having attacked them at Bound for Glory. They weren't looking for a measure of revenge immediately. They were okay waiting for 6 weeks later to challenge them for the titles. It's the right booking. It's an exciting match for the show. With these guys standing tall in the go-home and Javon wrestling Gunther 24 hours before this match, I'm not expecting a title change. Easy excuse built in, but really, it's what the NXT Tag Team division needs. And it would be unique to have cross-company champions holding a set of straps together. I'm not really sure that's been done, at least not recently. But I'll most likely have Dark State retaining. We'll talk about this a little bit later. We'll give you a Gold Rush preview. Zaruka later entered Ava's office with Sol Ruka confirming she's medically cleared and wants her rematch next week. Ava suggested they wait a few weeks or even push it off the deadline, but Sol did not want to delay, accepting the risk of getting back in the ring. I know not every one of you listening is a longtime subscriber, having heard every episode of the show, but I was so exacerbated at the booking of this last week. I don't want to rehash my rant. The long and short of it is that it was patently ridiculous to have Sol basically relinquish 2 championships, for her to only miss about a month of action for an injury that was entirely kayfabe. It wasn't a real injury. Protecting her from Blake Monroe made 0 sense. And now what? She's going to lose the match anyway because she'll sell the injured knee in the finish? Why not make that the reason that she lost the title in the first place? All right, mini rant over. It bothers me so much. It was completely unnecessary for the jump. And I just remain frustrated every time they're on screen. Blake Monroe later sat down for a conversation with her better half, which, as I suspected, was a darker version of herself. Not in a mirror, but in a pair of director's chairs. They commiserated about the North American Championship being exactly what Blake deserves, more than beauty, but power. Dark Blake, let's call her, reminded that Sol never actually lost the title, so it's not actually Bright Blake's strap until she beats her, especially since she never successfully split Zaruka. Then Dark Blake said Sol was better and more successful than Bright Blake to this point, and confidence and attitude isn't enough to retain the title. She said Blake will only win if they join forces and break Sol because she's not 100%. The idea is that Bright Blake blinds with her beauty, but Dark Blake gets the job done, and they need to coexist in order to be adored and respected. The glamour, the spotlight to be seen, and the woman from hell, the darkness, to be remembered. The best part about this may have been that it lasted 4 uninterrupted minutes, a stark departure from what WWE does on the main roster. Just compare this to Bayley. Yeah, she got multiple segments across a month, but in totality, maybe they added up to the 3.5, 4 minutes that Blake got here. Even if they did, this was on one episode. The 4 minutes were well spent here because every bit of the back and forth helped establish the gimmick, which has now been fully realized and fleshed out after we had only really been given bits and pieces of it for the first few months of her NXT run. There were Green Goblin vibes here, at least from what I've seen in the movies. I'm not really a comic book reader. This added so much depth to her character, and it made us as viewers care more about not only her as a performer, but where all of this is going to go. Perhaps best of all is that Dark Blake, I'll come up with better names eventually, but Dark Blake is basically the spirit of Toni Storm combined with the woman from hell. So this is, in many ways, a continuation of her original character for those in the know, all through the facade of the bubbly Sabrina Carpenter-styled Blake Monroe. Legitimate 10 out of 10, no notes. I hope this is nowhere near the last time we see one of these dual personality situations, and I hope it shows itself in really unique ways, such as through the mirror or a piece of glass backstage. She comes across it, sees herself in it. Whatever the case, perfection achieved on Tuesday night, and I have real high hopes for the Blake Monroe character going forward. Vanity Project backstage thanked Ava for giving Jackson Drake the chance to defend his Evolve title at Gold Rush against Shawn Legacy. Ethan Page, Chelsea Green, and Alba Fire then interrupted. The guys broing down a bit as Ethan put over Chelsea's United States Championship win. Alba insisted the mixed tag team title match would not happen because neither challenger has any clearance with Green. So Ava actually made her own booking decision, and she put Fire and Thea Hale on the show. Unfortunately, I rolled my eyes immediately at the match booking, knowing the most dominant NXT UK champion of all time was about to lose to a 22-year-old neophyte who hasn't even had a match in NXT since September. Hale later backstage summoned Joe Hendry, who said she inspired him, and he couldn't ask for a better partner heading into their match. Thea then gassed herself up, just giving Alba's accolades, saying her belief, Joe's belief, and the fans' belief is all she needs to win. This was Hale's best character building segment in months. I'm glad she's finally getting time. And I may be wrong, but I think she had a refreshed entrance without the I'm a grown-ass woman entrance, which we obviously crushed the few times that we heard it. So we had Hale against Fire. Thea did like a springboard coffin drop, but from a seated position, not even sure what to call it. She did it again in the ring, but missed. Alba escaped the Kimura lock by running her into the corner, hitting a tornado DDT. Hale came back with a Michinoku driver and another Kimura lock, with Page distracting everyone. Hendry ran him into the post, then avoided a slap from Green, who took a tope suicida from Hale. Fire caught her with a super kick back inside, but Thea countered the gory bomb perfectly, rolling down her body into a roll-through cover for the 1-2-3. Admittedly, I felt much better about the loss the way it was booked, giving Alba a bit of an out, but it's still unfortunate to see the way she's being positioned these days. She's a legitimate top-level talent, maybe not in character, but certainly in the ring. The match and segment was better than I expected, and there's a lot of momentum behind these four, particularly on social media. In fact, this reminds me, NXT did not air Hendry's latest music video, which we did post on social media. I know a lot of you either aren't on social media, you don't follow us. So you got to hear this because it's simply incredible. And I'll tell you what, I just went to play it from Twitter, but Hendry deleted the tweet for some reason. I am not entirely sure, but I found a stolen clip of it. So here you go.
Just 1 week ago, and I can still remember when Ethan had to eat some pie. And I'm sorry if I made you hurt. I'm just trying to give you free dessert, so maybe you'd be happy for a while. But you're a coward and you slithered. You missed the pie Thea delivered. Pie just missed your face. It hit your friends, you disgrace. I'm sure that you are going to cry when we hold the AAA titles high. But something touched me deep inside the day Chelsea got pie.
I have never been creamed on like this before.
Pie, pie, Chelsea got pie. Says she's never beaten cream, but that is a lie. And Ethan Page is with her most of the time, but Matt Cardona says that it's fine. Matt Cardona says that it's fine. Do you believe in Joe Hendry and Thea Hale as a tag team? They'll be the best AAA champs ever seen when they're at MSG. And we were singing pie, pie, Chelsea got pie. Says she's never beaten cream, but that is a lie. And Ethan Page is with her most of the time. Matt Cardona says that it's fine. Matt Cardona says that it's fine.
I mean, that's a 10 out of 10. I've heard a lot of these Joe Hendry songs and music videos. I think that's number one on the list, man. That's absolutely incredible. The chorus is just an absolute killer. Congratulations to Joe. You know, it was a couple weeks ago, I think. I said, you know, like the 15 minutes of fame, they're kind of up. I don't know if this guy is really going to work in NXT long term if he does sign with WWE. And there's still a part of me that, you know, believes that to a degree, especially the I believe in Joe Hendry just showing up, the whole deal. But you crank out content like that and you'll have some staying power. Let's just put it that way. That was fantastic. Now, as I said, that was published on social media. It wasn't on NXT, and it wouldn't have been on NXT, even if you happen to be watching it on Netflix. But what I can tell you is whether it's Raw, SmackDown, NXT, or premium live events on Netflix, even Saturday night's main event on YouTube, I am all in with NordVPN. It's easy to set up and a drastically better viewing experience with high-quality streams and commercial-free shows. All you have to do is sign up at nordvpn.com/gettingover, open the app, quick connect to any country that you like. Canada, United Kingdom, open Netflix and watch the show. This is just the WWE aspect, though. You can save money on AEW pay-per-views and watch other sporting events that don't air in your home region. NordVPN also allows you to get around online censorship or surveillance, protect your private data when web browsing, and avoid online threats. Plus, one NordVPN account can be used on 10 separate devices. To get the best discount from NordVPN, go to nordvpn.com/gettingover. Our link will give you 4 extra free months off the 2-year plan. And there's no risk with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. So improve your WWE viewing, save money, browse safer online, and get the best discount for the best VPN at nordvpn.com/gettingover. It is great to have NordVPN as the official singular sponsor of your boys right here on the Getting Over Wrestling podcast. And be sure to check our episode description for the full link if you do not feel like typing it out yourself. Continuing on with NXT, the Speed Championship was on the line. El Grande Americano against Jasper Troy. Jasper and Los Americanos tugged at his stupid chain ringside, with the referee ejecting the duo, who departed, but not before handing El Grande the weapon to load into his mask. He landed a regular headbutt, then got caught trying to load the mask, with Jasper squashing him in the corner and hitting Black Hole Slam to win. Continue to hate Speed on NXT? This was no better. El Grande's been loading his mask for months now, and the first time he gets caught is during a stupid Speed match on NXT, and now the title, the Speed title, is on a big dude who doesn't move fast, and this was again the first match of the show?
I don't get it. I'm sorry. I don't get it.
Jasper again showed he's not ready for prime time here. The chain gimmick remains horrendous. I know he won LFG, but everything about his elevation feels forced. I did like his parking lot promo later about not being who you think of when it comes to Speed, but it was really short. It got interrupted by heels, and he didn't do anything about it. It was almost identical to what happened with the women last week. Then we had Fallon Henley beat Skylar Ray, I think, in the second Speed qualifier to face Zarya for the title. Yes, 2 Speed matches on one show. Obviously, Silver King was thrilled. I wanted to defenestrate myself, okay? Ray botched a DDT badly, slamming Henley on her head. Fallon won with a Famouser, which I guess is a new finisher. I don't love it since she's better than that move, but she executed it well. You'll remember that Sol relinquished this title 2 weeks ago. Yet she could have been fighting the winner of this tournament in 2 weeks at Gold Rush, given she's now cleared. It's just absolutely ridiculous. There was a backstage segment later with Fatal Attraction where Lainey Reed said she knew what she needed to do, and the others basically just shrugged. We had Tavian Heights against Josh Briggs. Heights hit a late Superman punch, basically. Briggs kind of distracted the referee to basically drill Heights in the interior of his leg before hammering him with a bunch of fists in what I thought was about to be a really unique finishing sequence for a WWE match. Instead, Heights deadlifted Briggs for a slam, hitting some kind of sling blade, only to eat consecutive boots to the face. Briggs missed a running third attempt. His leg got hung over the rope, and Heights took advantage with a belly-to-belly suplex for the win. The latter stages of this match were exciting and well executed. I'm not entirely sure where this is going. I'm intrigued to a degree. Heights had a lot of momentum after his excursion in Japan. It just feels like he's lost some of that being back stateside. It's not to say he's regressed. He just hasn't continued making progress that he clearly made over there. I would send him to Japan for 4 to 6 months and let him work and be the athlete and wrestler he can be, because he's just not picking it up in NXT like he should be. Ava later gave Miles Bourne a talking to, ensuring he did not interfere in the main event, even though he got hit in the back with a chair by Trick recently. And I'm now realizing, like, is he not going to get revenge on that? Or is that going to be how Trick leaves, losing to Miles Bourne? So maybe Trick's not completely done, now that I think about it. Ren Sinclair and Kendall Gray then commiserated about Ren QCC, saying they needed one more member. Laney then just straight smacked Kendall across the face.
There's a new joke going around. Have you heard it? What is the 5 fingers say to the face? What? Slap!
That led to a brief brawl in what I presume will be an Evolve Championship match during the second week of Gold Rush. That way, all 3 Fatal Influence members have title opportunities on the special. Reed obviously has done absolutely nothing to deserve it, but she didn't get the speed match that she did deserve, so I guess this is something. Still, when it comes to Laney Reed,
stop trying to make fetch happen. It's not going to happen.
It's going to be extremely telling how she wrestles Kendall in this match. We'll see if she's actually deserving of the additional TV time that she has been getting and whether there is a higher ceiling for her. As of right now, though, I frankly just don't see it. That wraps up what happened on NXT television. I did want to add, not that I follow Pro Wrestling Noah with any regularity, but Yoshiki Inamura last weekend won the GHC Heavyweight Championship, their equivalent of the IWGP Heavyweight Championship. And Hank and Tank from NXT, who are currently there on an excursion, they won the Tag Team Championship. So congratulations to all of them, and that's pretty cool for them in Noah. Now we can do a quick preview of NXT Gold Rush. Week 1, I'll actually give you a couple predictions, and we'll go through the matches briefly. Week 2, I'm just going to tell you what the matches are, and of course, we will then preview them next week, even though they'll be taped. Of course, Silver King does not read the results. So this week, the AAA Mixed Tag Team Championships, Ethan Page and Chelsea Green defending against Joe Hendry and Thea Hale. I simply cannot see any reason to change the titles. They just strapped up Chelsea for the express purpose of them being double champions together, having a North American style, United States style championship, and then the AAA mixed tag team titles. And I don't know why you would establish that and then have them drop it right away. Plus, Thea can easily take the fall here. So Page and Green should be retaining. I'm probably looking forward to it. I was going to say more than anything else on the show. There's another match I'm looking forward to more, but second most on the entire show. NXT Tag Team Championships, Dark State defending against Javon Evans and Leon Slater. Like I said, as much as I would love Evans and Slater to win the titles, I think it would be a really unique booking, having split champions across 2 different promotions. And obviously they both really Javon is the one who needs to be elevated. Leon is literally the X Division champion over in TNA. I don't know why you'd go Dark State, Hardys, Dark State, Evans and Slater in such a quick order. If you wanted Evans and Slater to win the titles, frankly, it'd be more meaningful if they beat the Hardys. So that doesn't make sense. Plus, you have Javon coming off the Gunther match, where you got to imagine he's going to enter this all taped up and sore, limping around. So he'll probably take the L, and people are going to be so upset when Javon loses this match. But given he just fought Gunther 24 hours earlier in Madison Square Garden, fingers crossed, a match that goes 15 plus minutes, then him losing here, it will make logical sense. North American Championship, Blake Monroe defending against Sol Ruca. Again, I'm flummoxed by this storyline. I don't understand why they stripped Sol of the titles, why they gave her a kayfabe knee injury, and now she's going to fight anyway. And I can't imagine she wins the title from Blake, because that would kill Blake. Like, unless you're going to promote her up to the main event, which she just won the North American Championship, and she didn't even beat the champion to do it. So there better be storyline implications and reasons for them doing it this way that I already cannot see. Blake Monroe has to retain the title. I'd be shocked if it went another way, but I am looking forward to this match. I'm curious to see what they can do when, the Zarya aspect isn't around, and when Blake can hopefully go full out in a singles match for, I want to say, the second time, really, in her NXT career to this point. And then what I expect to be the main event, the Women's Championship, Tatum Paxley defending against JC Jane. I don't want you guys to be mad at me, but I think they're going to change the title. I think JC is going to beat Tatum and win it back, unless they are getting called up to the main roster, JC and Fallon Henley, which they should be. SmackDown needs them so bad. I can't even express how important it is for them to get out of NXT and get over to the main roster. There's plenty of women on this brand. They're not needed anymore, and they are needed badly on the blue brand on SmackDown. But unless that's happening imminently, there's just something about Tatum's title change, the way she's been booked the last 3 weeks. Is he getting more and more frustrated with her? It feels like they kind of run the spot back from Halloween Havoc where Izzy is there. She again has the title, but this time she doesn't go after JC. She goes after Tatum and she costs her, and JC wins the title back. And I don't know where you go from there. Maybe, Tatum breaks away from calling and she does, as a babyface, maybe link with Lyra Valkyria and she wins the title back at Deadline or wins the title back at Stand and Deliver next year or some event in early 2026. I could see Tatum winning the Iron Survivor Challenge if she loses this and then wins that. And I think fans would be okay with that if she lost here and then won Iron Survivor. But again, I'm not entirely sure where this is going to go. Paxley could retain. And if she does, then that's it. Jane and Henley have to go up to the main roster, period. But if she loses, people are going to be mad. But I am okay taking a slight wait and see approach because she is being booked as a dumb babyface. And if she drops the title to JC, she'll be able to get over Izzy and then hopefully prove herself to be smart and cunning and then take the title for real at a later date. So yeah, my prediction is Jane beats Paxley for the title, as upset as many of you will be if that actually transpires. Week 2 for NXT Gold Rush. Like I said, not going to do predictions or breakdowns here. We'll talk about this next week on the show. Same bat time, same bat channel. TNA Knockouts Championship, Kalani Jordan defending against Jordan Grace and Li Ying Lee, I believe is how you say her name. Speed Championship, Zarya against Fallon Henley for the vacant title. Evolve Championship, Kendall Gray against Laney Reed. And Evolve Championship, Jackson Drake against Sean Legacy. This card is weak as shit. Granted, it's a taped show, but still a 5-minute speed match and 2 short Evolve matches. No NXT titles on the line. All of them front-loaded on the first show. Not putting Trick and Ricky on the first show. That way you could put the women's title or at least another big championship match, the AAA titles, on the second show. It's extremely odd booking, even for a holiday week. It's not like it's on Thanksgiving. It's 2 days beforehand. So hopefully something else gets added during the first Gold Rush show. But as of right now, it's 2 4-match cards. And this one is speed and Evolve heavy with a TNA title mixed in. And I got to tell you, that is not appointment television. I hate to say it because I love the NXT show in totality. Now, we have plenty left to talk about here at the Getting Over Wrestling podcast, but I must remind you,
I happen to love the number 5.
and I hope you do as well, because for $5 a month or $50 for the entire year, you can become an official Getting Overhead. Just visit buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Sign up. You'll get bonus audio, the fastest 5 minutes in professional wrestling, instant reactions to every major show, and exclusive news analysis posts every week. Please support us. We remain a free show, and we plan to for the rest of our run. But we could use that support because we only have one sponsor here on the Getting Over Wrestling podcast. So please hit us up, buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Moving over to AEW, where obviously a vast majority of this section is focused on AEW Blood and Guts. In terms of match relevancy this week, 6 out of 9 were indeed relevant. That's because all 3 matches on Dynamite were, and half the matches on Collision, 3 out of 6 were relevant. And I believe all 3 of those were advantage matches for Blood and Guts. So just so much of the show revolved around this that it naturally hit that marker that we want AEW to hit. But of course, we need to see this on a regular week where you're not just directly building to 2 shows on your other program. Regardless, a step in the right direction. On Collision, in a taped segment after last week's Dynamite, Don Callis confronted Death Riders because heaven forbid any storyline happen in AEW without Callis being involved in 2025. My Lord. He basically wanted them to destroy Mark Briscoe for Kyle Fletcher. Pac was like, okay, man, whatever. Callis then said they'd owe him one, but John Moxley got in his face saying they don't need favors. I got nothing here. I guess we'll see if it has any legitimate reasoning in the future. On Collision, Roderick Strong beat Mox via countout to win the Advantage Series 2-1 for the faces. Strong beat a count outside after Paradigm Shift and kicked out of a stomp. Then he put that loser Daniel Garcia through a ringside table with a toss Uranagi off the apron. Strong slammed Mox into the steel steps, and the countout came because someone under the ring grabbed his leg, preventing him from re-entering. It was Darby Allin with a taser that Nigel McGuinness called a cattle prod, even though it was visibly not one, unless I don't know what cattle prods look like, but I believe cattle prods are on sticks, right? Because it's an animal and you're doing it from far away, as opposed to a taser, which you're doing close range. So this happened again on Dynamite. So again, maybe I just don't know what these things are called, but I could have sworn it's just a taser. This was a solid match until the finish. Okay, let's move to Dynamite. We're going to talk about the first of 2 Blood and Guts matches, technically the second of 2. It was for the men: Darby Allin, Mark Briscoe, Orange Cassidy, Roderick Strong, and Kyle O'Reilly against the Death Riders. Darby and Wheeler Yuta started with a skateboard. Orange came in with a backpack and broken sunglasses. Garcia was next. Briscoe did not show up when his music hit. He had been attacked in the locker room, so Strong went out instead and did a cutter, putting Yuta into Garcia's head. Then he somehow bladed. I can't tell you how. Claudio Castagnoli swung Darby with Orange on his back, then threw Allin from one ring to the other, repeating the same general spot like the 3rd time in the last month. Mox entered relatively early, obviously started trying to gouge people in the head and body with a fork. O'Reilly bladed into a full Crimson Mask, a reminder that he has diabetes, and losing a lot of blood as a diabetic can be extremely and unnecessarily dangerous, but he bled all match. Mox and Garcia then literally took turns stabbing him with a fork and some other stuff. Mox grabbed some type of like blade at the end of a stick and started kayfabe cutting Kyle with it. And I'm just like, what the fuck, man? More stabbing from other people. Like it was the whole Death Riders got into a stabbing orgy. Claudio choked Orange with a chain in an abdominal stretch. Mox and Garcia pile drove Darby into broken glass before dragging his body through it. This as Briscoe was ruled out for the match on commentary, and the cage got locked after Pac entered. The faces were all dead, and the heels didn't try to end the match. Briscoe then just limped to the ring with bolt cutters. He snapped the thinnest chain you have ever seen in your life. Briscoe climbed to the top, where Yuta somehow wound up too. I missed how he got there. There's just so happened to be a rope with a hook on top of the structure. So Briscoe flung it over the side and he hoisted a bunch of chairs upward. He ultimately hit Jay Driller atop the structure. Darby also did the Montez Ford spot, crawling across the interior for a coffin drop. More folks wound up ringside, with Darby attempting to use a belt on Pac, only for Gabe Kidd to show up with a taser that he kayfabe used on Allen's chest. Mox then stapled Orange's hands into his own pockets, I'd say about 10 times. As much as I hate the staple gun being pulled out in every hardcore match, this was the best use ever of it. Pop me. Darby got choked out with a belt as he was pulled atop the entryway with Pac. This as Kidd poured lighter fluid on 2 tables and lit them on fire. Darby got press slammed off the entrance structure through both tables, which appropriately exploded. As stupid and unnecessary and dangerous as it was, it did look incredible. O'Reilly gave Mox the finger as he had him in a bulldog choke with a chain. So the Riders pulled a chair out, put it around his neck. Orange removed his hands from his pockets. They weren't bleeding or anything, right? So I don't even think he actually used staples this time. He started doing a whole run for the faces. Strong tried to throw 2 guys through tables. Both just slid off. Garcia almost broke his neck landing. Then he tried to spear Claudio through a table. It also didn't work. After a counter sequence, Mox ate an orange punch between the rings and got put in an ankle lock by O'Reilly. Claudio got double speared through a table. It finally broke. Mox countered the ankle lock into a bulldog choke, but it got countered back into an ankle lock with a grapevine before Mox tapped out in the middle of the ring with the faces winning. I forgot to mention, I think Briscoe, Strong, and O'Reilly also bladed during this. As you'll hear me say about the women's match in a little bit, the finish may have been the best part of the entire chaotic match. Playing into the whole extended story of Mox being susceptible to submissions, it certainly made sense if the babyfaces were going to win. I'm trying to figure out, though, what the end game is with Mox in this character trait, because it's happened so often now that it's no longer new, and his character hasn't responded to these shortcomings in any real way. He just keeps doing the same thing. Is he going to get kicked out of the faction? Because that should be the move. Either way, they've successfully built an interesting story around this, which is relatively rare for AEW, considering how much gets thrown against the wall there. I'm also wondering what this means for O'Reilly, who's now beaten Mox multiple times and has already had like 37 title matches in AEW, losing all of them, of course. Are they actually going to elevate this guy and strap him up? If so, why? Like, I like Kyle O'Reilly, don't get me wrong, but out of that roster, That's the guy you're elevating? Is he going to win the national title, perhaps? Or was this all for naught? Now, look, it was ridiculous that the Riders had a 2-man advantage after Darby got eliminated and still lost. What happened to Pac and Kid? Why did they not return to the ring? I cannot explain that to you. The door was open. That's a huge logic error. In fact, the spot probably should have been Darby pulling Pac down with him so they both took the bump and eliminated one another from the match. Also problematic was the Briscoe part. The guy gets murked backstage. They pull him from the match, but he comes in and wrestles like nothing was wrong. If you were going to do this spot with Briscoe and you were going to have the faces win, his contributions should have been saved until after Darby got put through the tables. The last gasp effort for the faces. He sees his team is down a man. He takes out Pac and Kid on the entrance. He runs into the ring through the open door, and suddenly the faces have the numbers advantage. That is how you take a logical booking and make it logical. This is a free hindsight service that we offer here from your good friends at the Getting Over Wrestling podcast. But I would love to charge WWE or AEW for this when matches are actually put on paper before they air on television. I digress. The blading here was somehow less egregious than the women's match, but the stabbing and cutting and stuff, it's not something I'm ever going to enjoy. It's violence for violence's sake, which is what commentary actively put over as much as it could. And it turned me off, especially to the level they did it. There was like a 5-minute straight stabbing and cutting part of this match. As I said, ironically, I loved the stapler and flaming table spots, and the finish was spot on. So it's not like I didn't like the match, or I didn't hate it. I enjoyed it quite a bit, in fact. The grade here is actually tough because there were swaths of this that were perfect, and the finish was great. But the lacking logic of the heels losing despite having a 2-man advantage at that point was kind of insane. Pac and Kid were undamaged. You had all the stabbing and the 3 failed table spots at the end. That was kind of a woof too. So I'm going to settle at 4.25 stars and an A, which for a TV match is a great grade. It was an hour-long blood and gore fest. You know, could it have been better? Sure. It absolutely could have been worse, and we've seen worse matches from this stipulation in the past. So I found this to be immensely successful, despite the problems I had with it. On Collision, Chris Statlander cut a stairway promo on Mercedes Moné, saying she's basically better than her in every way, except Stat has complete focus on being AEW champion. Then she basically said all the other titles Moné has are worthless pieces of crap, which is a hell of a way to talk about those other promotions, by the way. This was extremely try-hard. It didn't really hit for me. I don't love Stat as a promo. On Collision, Athena backstage was angry about getting pinned by Harley Cameron last week. Tough to blame her. She blamed everyone else, Moné, Stat, Billy Starks, but said she'd destroy Harley if she winds up surviving Blood and Guts. Great promo by Athena, as usual. She's a different class and caliber of talker than pretty much everyone else in the women's division on AEW. On Collision, Jamie Hayter beat Sky Blue to tie the Advantage Series 1-1. Hayter avoided Code Blue, hit a Rainmaker meant to be Haterade for the win. Solid enough match. The heels attacked her after the bell, leading to a pull-apart brawl ahead of the rubber match, in which Thekla beat Cameron to win the advantage for the heels 2-1. This went on way too long at 12 minutes. Thekla obviously won with her spear. So that moves us to the first Blood and Guts match, which we're discussing second for the women. Chris Statlander, Toni Storm, Mina Shirakawa, Jamie Hayter, and Willow Nightingale, and Harley Cameron against Mercedes Moné, Megan Bayne, Marina Shafir, and Triangle of Madness. This opened the show. Sky bladed literally 2 minutes into the match, full Crimson Mask. So much that commentary couldn't help but keep mentioning it. It was ridiculous. Julia Hart entered next. They failed to find a weapon that they had planted in a turnbuckle pad. Woof. Harley was out next, and I'll just say,
it looked good, but she's got me saying, hey now!
Thekla was next using her belt before Hayter entered with a bag of thumbtacks, but she swung them, and they basically flew out of the ring. Bayne came in, claymored Hayter before cleaning house. Stat was next with a pool cue, and it was cool that the injured women actually got to briefly show up ringside. Queen Aminata and Penelope Ford. Stat and Willow, despite being teammates and presumably planning for the match, immediately got into like a we're still not friends type of thing. Bayne and Stat were next to Blade. Moné came in hitting a tornado DDT into Stat's title, which was randomly brought into the ring for the match. Mercedes then just walked out, and handed some of her titles to all of her partners. Mina had an extremely odd sequence and entrance. Shafir was the last heel in because she's the worst wrestler, with Storm the last face because she's the most over wrestler. Shafir kicked Stat into a bed of nails ringside. Storm brought in pearls and champagne. Shafir no-sold the former because, they're just pearls. Storm stuck broken glass to tape on her hand, though it was basically impossible to see it. Hayter powerbomb blew off the top rope into an elevated table that didn't break, so she did an elbow drop, and it still didn't break. So if you're counting, that's 5 or 6 failed broken table spots in these 2 matches so far. It was just not a smart table placement in this case. It was much more dangerous to hang it between the ropes than it is to just put it flat on the canvas. Protect these women. Mercedes then kissed Tony because, of course she did, and hit Monet Maker. Backstabber to Stat followed. Then she got rid of Cameron's puppet, so Harley punched her with brass knuckles that were hidden underneath the puppet. That was my favorite spot of the match to that point. Very fun. It would have been better, though, if she punched her with the puppet. Mercedes sold it like hell, and then Harley revealed the brass knucks. Difference between good and great. Hart and Thekla then climbed through a truss to escape the cage, take out a referee, steal the key, and open the door. Stat put Monet into a table of her remaining titles with a short-range Samoan drop off a truss. Shafir bladed before taking a double DDT into some glass. Julia then locked the door with, I believe, Harley, Stat, and Monet still outside. Storm went to do a hip attack into Shafir with a mirror, but Marina just chucked it in her face with shrapnel flying across the ring and cutting Mina in her face for real. So dangerous. What if it hit her in the eye? Shirakawa followed with a figure 4 on Bane using a barbed wire bat between their legs. Shafir then stepped on glass purposefully to stomp Mina with it. Storm then got held back by Triangle, screaming, as Bane again and again whipped Shirakawa with a belt right to the small of her back, leading Tony to surrender. It was specifically the TBS title, for whatever that's worth. This was simultaneously great and not my personal taste. The finish was extremely well done. I particularly liked how it did not happen quickly after the heels gained the numbers advantage. That was terrific strategy. They straight up outsmarted the faces moving outside the ring, and they preyed on Tony's weakness of Marina to get the victory. I really wish commentary sold it. They did not. They just kept talking about the match being incredible. My issue with the finish was we did not see, even for a second, Stat or Cameron or both of them try to get back in the ring. Stat was the one who delivered the offense to Monet, as she absolutely should have, because she was the champion. But she should have been trying to claw her way back into the structure. It was less of an issue with Harley because she's not as serious of a wrestler, but she took even less punishment out there. There was no reason for her not to be moving. Both of them were ringside. They were capable of at least trying. If you have Mina getting her ass kicked, Tony getting held back, and then the visual of Stat and Harley trying but failing to get into the cage, it's even better. Again, the difference between good and great. The excessive blading was unnecessary. A little would have been fine. That much was ridiculous. And the match leaned heavy on weaponry along with attempted shock value over high-quality wrestling spots. That's what you're going to get with AEW, so it was not a surprise, but it did make most of the match rather blasé. I'm pretty sure at least Hayter got concussed. There might have been another, and there were so many mistakes. Stat may have been the MVP. Shafir actually did something for the first time in forever. With the actual wrestling talent in the ring, I know they could have accomplished more to make it memorable if they weren't so focused on their goal, which was not so much to have a great wrestling match as it was to say the women can be hardcore in AEW too, just like the men. There's real progress and forced progress. This felt like the latter. 4 stars A-, got the job done for what they wanted it to be. The drama of the finish got it the extra quarter. And if you're slightly higher and you're at a 4.25A for this, if you're comparing your grades to mine, I was almost there. I was kind of going back and forth between the two. There was just so many mistakes in this match and so many parts of it that took me out. When even I compared it to the men, I said, man, that men's match was an A. And the women was just slightly below, but they were fantastic. And in some ways they exceeded my expectations, and others, they actually kind of fell below it a little bit. There's 2 main takeaways we can discuss coming out of these matches in this show as a whole. And let me state now, Blood and Guts as a show, despite whatever personal problems I might have with what they did in the matches, it was the best edition of Dynamite in months, maybe the best of the year. Part of that is because there were only 5 segments and none of them were actively bad, but it felt like more of a premium event on TV. Now, whether you want to call that a great showcase for the company, that's another topic altogether, because you have Hangman Page out here reiterating that line about it being family-friendly entertainment, get in for only $29, and then you do that shit. I grew up in the 90s. I'm not adverse to hardcore wrestling like ECW. I'm not adverse to lewd booking like during the Attitude Era, but a lot has changed in 25 to 30 years, and even WWE back then didn't try to bill itself as family-friendly. There is nothing about AEW that is family-friendly, and that's okay. Just don't lie about it. This was, and I don't believe I need a qualifier here, the most violent episode of wrestling television I've ever seen. And that includes ECW back in the day, when we're talking opening bell to the finale of the show. And while some may be putting that over, the AEW sickos out there, I don't necessarily think that's a good thing when you're trying to expand your audience. Those, by the way, weren't even my 2 takeaways, which I now realize are 3 takeaways. First, I do find it rather wild that leading into and coming out of this show, not a single person mentioned that AEW booked Blood and Guts in November, 2 weeks before War Games, as an effort to counterbook WWE and take some of the wind out of the sails of their signature match on that show. The event has only been held May through July previously, but it got pushed 4 months, 1 week before an AEW pay-per-view. For what other reason? Now, look, I don't care about it because WWE has actively counterbooked AEW on some occasions, not all occasions that are erroneously attributed to them, but definitely some. And that's competition. It's cool. But I find it hypocritical that no one is even mentioning this when it comes to Blood and Guts and War Games. It's actually crazy that this is not a continued topic, but you know why. It's because it's AEW doing it to WWE and not WWE doing it to AEW. Second, what is the point of having a cage structure like this, an enclosed structure, with the express intent to keep everyone in the ring for a war, if in both matches, people can easily escape it and significant portions of the bout are done outside the ring? We all know escaping the structure happens occasionally when it comes to matches like these. But both of them in the same night, at least the women were super creative doing it. I thought it added so much to their finish. The Briscoe spot could have been done right before the cage locked, but then Darby would cry, I guess, because he's not able to risk his life in front of 6,000 people. The more pressing conversation point is where AEW goes from here, both when it comes to these Blood and Guts matches and hardcore wrestling in general. It's gotten to the point where one would believe they've done everything: stabbing, cutting, hypodermic needle, hanging, drowning, broken glass, bed of nails, staple gun, gasoline, fire tables, flamethrower, hitting someone with a car, dragging someone from a car. And I'm obviously not even close to covering everything. All that except the needle, flamethrower, and car stuff happened Wednesday. In order for future matches to exceed present ones, there's basically a never-ending effort now to do more. But at some point, you can't. Like, are you going to shoot someone? Are you actively going to stab them with a knife as opposed to a fork? These matches, as entertaining as they were, they leaned so ridiculously heavy on gore and weapons that they were hardly professional wrestling. And please spare me the sanctimonious Silver King. You don't get to determine what is and is not professional wrestling. Obviously, that's true. I don't. But I'm not going to apologize for wanting to see wrestling moves and wrestling matches. And if you listen to Bryan Danielson during the men's match, there were points where he was like, under his breath, what are we doing here? Like, you could hear it in his voice. The best part of the men's match was the finish with wrestling moves. I'm not sure there was an active best part of the women's match, but I did like the Samoan drop spot, and Harley was fun as usual. So at some point, you have to ask yourself, if you're AEW, what's next here? Do we, now that we've reached almost like the peak of how violent we can be, say, okay, going forward, we're never going to do more than 50% of that stuff? Because then what happens is next year, if they do that, let's say they say, hey, everyone, do Blood and Guts, but you're only going to be able to do half as many violent spots. Then you're going to have fans on the back end say, well, that didn't even come close to comparing to last year. And then what happens in 2027? We got to do all the violence again. This time we're going to shoot somebody. Like, you know what I mean? There has to be a limit. And for me, this I don't know how they can go beyond what they did here and have it still be, I don't even want to use the word safe, but have them be relatively confident that someone is not going to get seriously hurt. And that's where I stand on this. So again, I enjoyed and was entertained by both matches. I thought it was maybe AEW's best TV show of the entire year. At the same time, if you can't simultaneously have this other thought in your head about it being violence for violence's sake, and there needing to be a limit and probably tailing back from what this was, then you're just not being truthful. And frankly, you're not wanting AEW to succeed, because if you think this is going to expand their audience and bring in families, then you're legitimately fooling yourself.
Come on, Oos. It's a joke, right? It's a joke, Oos. You ribbing me?
The middle match on Dynamite was the AEW Championship, Hangman Page defending against Powerhouse Hobbs in a Falls Count Anywhere. I figured it was booked with this stipulation to give AEW extra time to clear the ring, and they would start backstage and then make it out there. But everything was emptied, and they made their way to the ring as usual. Hobbs did World's Strongest Slam on Page into the steel steps before a few minutes later getting back body dropped off the announce table straight onto the floor with Hobbs landing on his tailbone. He immediately stood up, no-selling it, which was dumb even for a big guy. It was quite a fall, and actually an incredibly stupid spot. Hobbs did a spinebuster through a table in the crowd. They actually climbed higher with Page putting Hobbs atop of Vom. He ran at him with his boot and lightly hit him in the head. And then Hobbs just fell backward through a table with a foam road case falling on top of him. And they got the 1-2-3 on the floor. Referees moved it off of him like it was made of air. Katsuyori Shibata attacked Hangman as he was going back to the ring. Samoa Joe joined with a steel chair, demanded the cage be lowered. So, of course, the cage got lowered, which I understand we're supposed to suspend disbelief in wrestling. This happens in WWE. It happened in WCW and ECW and every promotion ever. Why do the production people listen to the wrestler who says lower the cage? It doesn't. Why would you listen to him? He's not in control. Anyway, cage is coming down. Eddie Kingston and Hook saved before it fully lowered. The heels got out of dodge. The faces were left in the ring. So Page took the opportunity to grab a mic and challenge Joe to a steel cage match 2 weeks from now, while literally standing in a cage on a show that had 2 cage matches. I like the stipulation for a Hangman Joe match. Like, it makes sense for them. I don't like it happening this soon after Blood and Guts when there's so many other options they had at their disposal. And going back to what I'm talking about when it comes to, WWE running War Games, AEW was like, all right, we're going to give you 3 cage matches now before War Games airs. So you can't tell me they're not counter-programming them. Now, as far as Hangman and Hobbs, it was fine. It was kind of short, 14 minutes, but I think there were 2 commercial breaks. There was at least one really long one. Hobbs took a hell of a bump for a big man. Falling that distance is crazy. So I don't disrespect the spot, but it did lack something for me. Not having Hangman actually do a move, just lightly hit him in the head. He falls backwards. 3.5 stars in a B. Might be generous, actually. It really wasn't that great of a match. On Collision, Bang Bang Gang beat FTR to open the show. There was no reason for this match happening. Juice Robinson finally looked like his normal self again. Bandito and Gravity, for some reason, distracted late, as did Jet Speed, leading to Dax Harwood taking a famouser on the ring apron and a flatliner DDT for the upset win. I remember FTR shit-talked Bandito's mother or grandmother, and I believe a different brother on Dynamite, but I barely remembered Gravity was his younger brother. And commentary, I could be wrong. They didn't tell us that. So it just seemed random that it was Bandito and Gravity and not Brody King here. Furthermore, FTR literally just earned the number 1 contendership 1 week earlier. And the first thing they do is lose? Shouldn't Bang Bang Gang now be co-number 1 contenders? So yeah, whatever. Later backstage, Jet Speed announced that they would be in the Casino Gauntlet match. The backstage interviewer called it a battle royal, which it is not. Spoiler alert, neither of them are winning. Also, the whole aspect of wrestlers declaring for the gauntlet is stupid, solely because something that made the match type so exciting was not knowing who was waiting in the wings or who was out next. The idea is the match can end at any time. If you announce 20 people for it, we know 18 at least are going to be in it. Now, at this point, I should mention that Tony Khan brought out Ric Flair and Ricky Steamboat for Blood and Guts in Greensboro, North Carolina. The hypocrisy and irony of doing this with Flair and people not having a problem with it when they would crucify WWE for bringing Flair to an event in 2025 was absurd. The lone positive is that Flair did not appear on TV, but still, he was used as a promotional tactic to get people to buy tickets to the show. And that's almost just as bad. Steamboat did appear on TV, with Tony Schiavone running down old history and Ricky just kind of saying stuff until FTR interrupted. And they did their normal shtick, talking down to him over and over and over. It felt like it went on forever. Such an eye roll for me. Steamboat decided to walk away because he's 73 and, these guys are going to kick his ass. But FTR started punching him until Bandito and Brody King saved, with Steamboat getting shots in on Dax as revenge. By the way, this whole gimmick of Khan trying to co-opt the history of professional wrestling and legends who have nothing to do with AEW, but relating them all to AEW, it is getting old real fast. I get that he's a wrestling geek in a positive way, but Steamboat and Flair and the Japanese guys and Owen Hart, they didn't wrestle for your company, dude. And AEW is not classic wrestling brought back to life as a new promotion. It's transparent and it's really frustrating. On Collision, Fletcher was talking shit about Briscoe backstage when Kazuchika Okada came up, saying he had Fletcher's back, unlike Konosuke Takeshita, who was not there. Okada suggested they were the real captains of the family. It may have been the longest full English promo Okada has cut since joining AEW, and it was actually interesting, unlike most of what he's done character-wise during his time there. The Okada-Takeshita feud, it may be what interests me most on the brand right now. It's perhaps the only flawless booking. On Collision, the TNT Championship was on the line. Fletcher retained his title over Ace Austin, who got a title shot despite Briscoe being next in line. Why? That I cannot say. The dude is 1-1 in AEW singles. His lone win was over Brian Keith. Austin did a cool step-through springboard sweep kick, only to get caught trying his finisher for a brainbuster false finish. Commentary hammered us with every platitude and slogan at this point. Literally a machine gun of one after another. Fletcher needed the top rope brainbuster in order to retain. Match of the night, 4 stars A-. Fletcher and Austin worked extremely well together. Austin proved his talent. The problem, as so often happens in AEW, is that every match has to be a 15-minute banger, so even low-card challengers like this, who don't deserve to be in the ring with Fletcher, look like they should be at his level. It diminishes the champion. On Dynamite, the family destroyed Jurassic Express in front of a trailer in the parking lot. The Young Bucks with Okada and Callis exited the trailer to see the destruction that had been left at their feet. Obviously, it was a recruitment attempt with a suggestion that they would do the same to Kenny Omega next week. Logical along the lines of what's been booked. Clearly, we're being led to expect the Bucks to ultimately refuse Callis and turn babyface, and that's definitely better than the alternative. What I do find a bit funny is how people complain about like Bloodline adjacent stuff happening in WWE still, when Elite adjacent stuff is still happening in AEW over literally the exact same period of time. I stopped caring about the Bucks and Omega and such years ago, mostly because of how it's been touched on recently, similar to how I feel about MFT over on SmackDown. On Collision, TJ beat 2 jobbers in 2 minutes. This actually would have been a relevant match had the originally scheduled competitors been involved, but they were not. And let's briefly break down the story. So if you remember, Nixon Newell, the former Tegan Knox, and her partner, Miranda Alizé, they showed up on, I want to say, Collision a week ago. Maybe it was 2 weeks ago. They're not signed to AEW, but they were debuting in AEW. They wanted to fight. They had a match. They got beat. And they were kind of building something in a backstage deal with TJ. They were scheduled to have a match on this show. The facts that we know are that they learned the match was only going to be 3 minutes long, and they told AEW, we'd rather not do that because we don't see the point of having developed a story and then paying it off with a 3-minute match. Now, this is where stories differ. Reportedly, initially coming out of the show, they basically threw a fit, said, we're not doing this, stormed out of the building, and AEW was forced to kind of find someone else to take their place. They found these 2 jobbers, and the match went on. They claim that it was more agreeable of a situation than that. They went to AEW and they said, hey, we understand how you've booked us. We really don't think this makes a lot of sense. We'd rather have a longer match, whatever. And AEW said, okay, fine. We'll just go to somewhere else. And because they were in a small venue, they didn't want to take up space backstage. So they left and they're on good terms with the company. Now, I don't even really care what side of this you believe. End of the day, for a brief story set up on TV, 3 minutes in a match was ridiculous. The match should have been delayed for a show where they had more time, or time should have been taken away from Thekla and Harley, which went on way too long. There's no reason to force a 6th match on a 2-hour show if you're not going to give it time. Just don't air it and air something else. Now, that's not to say anything about what Newell and Alizé did and who's in the right and wrong. I don't know what the story is exactly. yes, if you are not signed to a company and they're giving you an opportunity to be on national TV, theoretically, you should not turn your nose up at that, especially when you're Nixon, who self-admitted that she has a year left in wrestling because her knees are so shot. So take every moment you can get and make the most of it. That's what I would do. But at the same time, were they probably right to say that like doing a 3-minute match is kind of crazy? And by the way, this went under 3 minutes. It was like 2.5. I think that's fair for them to kind of stick up for themselves, right? And say, like, we're here, we're trying to do something. You're having us lose 2 weeks in a row. Okay. But you're giving us less than 3 minutes to do it. We can't show ourselves. We can't flash. We can't do anything. It's kind of fair. I mean, I talk about it here on the show all the time. One of the things I've criticized WWE about for years, and they've gotten so much better at it recently, is if you do a 3-minute match and you want us to care about the people involved, guess what? We're not going to. It doesn't allow the winner to show anything, and the loser looks like crap by comparison. It's why the speed matches on NXT suck, because they shouldn't be on television. They're made for social media. And it's why sometimes when NXT puts Ren Sinclair in there against someone who's a little bit more legitimate than her right now, it's like, why did you use Ren for this? Ren is a good wrestler. She's actually capable in the ring. She should be getting time. And if you want to give her 5, 6, 7 minutes, okay. But if you're giving her 2.5 minutes just to lose, use someone else. And that's pretty much what they said about themselves here. So again, I'm not casting dispersions on AEW or them. I'm just kind of telling you what happened. And we'll see if they get booked again. We'll see if their story's correct or if AEW's story's correct. But I'll tell you, the amount of people who came out to like support AEW's side on this, it's pretty ironic what Kenny Omega said about Gail Kim, because there's a lot of people in AEW who spin on it for the TK gift basket. Let's just put it that way. On Collision, Acclaimed backstage said they were not acclaimed and would appear separately at Tailgate Brawl. The interviewer basically told them Tony Khan said the ratings and merchandise sales are better when they're together. Well, let me just tell you, folks, the ratings are public. They're not. They were technically better when they were apart, but that made them mad hearing as much, and they were agreeable in their anger. My patience is wearing so thin with this. It's the same thing every week, basically no progression. By the way, what happened to Jerry Lynn? Like, remember when he was part of this? He's gone. All right, so that wraps up AEW this week. Like I said, I was very positive about what we got from Dynamite. When it comes to Collision, though, it's just really a shitty show, and it's not getting any better. I want to say the ratings were below 300,000 this week, and they've been in the 2s and 3s recently on Saturday night, going against college football, yes, and other things that are happening. But, I mean, it's not a good time to run the show. The show shouldn't really be happening. I really would not be surprised if you see 3-hour Dynamites in 2026 and Collision off the air. Or the extra hour of programming is moved to something that they put on Saturday or Sunday mornings as like a WWE Superstars from back in the day, hoping to catch some kids watching the product and getting them to tune in. But I cannot imagine that Collision survives. I just can't. So that wraps up this edition of the Getting Over Wrestling podcast. Obviously, we had a ton to discuss when it came to both NXT and AEW. Next week in this spot, we'll have results from the first week of Gold Rush. And if my math is correct, it will also be the AEW Full Gear Ultimate Preview. So a loaded show for you today, a loaded show coming for you next week. We do not rest right here on the Getting Over Wrestling podcast. Of course, our next episode will be covering WWE on Tuesday. And if you missed this week's WWE episode, make sure you listen to it, because, man, we had a great conversation about John Cena completing the career Grand Slam, winning the Intercontinental Championship from Dominic Mysterio, the returns of Rhea Ripley and Io Sky, and everything that transpired on WWE television. So make sure, for some reason you missed it, you go back and listen. On the way out, allow the Silver King to remind you that here at Getting Over,
I happen to love the number 5.
and I hope you do as well. For $5 a month, $50 for the entire year, you can become an official Getting Overhead. Just visit buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Sign up. You'll get bonus audio, the fastest 5 minutes in professional wrestling, instant reactions to every major show, and exclusive news analysis posts every week. Again, buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. We remain a free show. We only have one sponsor. We greatly appreciate your financial support. Also, don't forget to follow us on social media at Getting Overcast. On Twitter and Blue Sky, you get episode drops, news, analysis, highlights, all that good stuff. On YouTube, when you subscribe, you can listen to full-length audio episodes and watch full-length video interviews. Lastly, here at Getting Over, it is always about one thing.
It's all about the five.
So head over to Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Leave a 5-star rating on Apple. Take a little extra time. Leave a 5-star written review. If you do, we'll read it live right here on the show. Thank you all so much for listening to this edition of the Getting Over Wrestling podcast. It is time for the Silver King to sign off and leave you with just 3 final words. Bye for now.